On a chilly January morning in Orlando, a young woman named Alison Keys left her front door behind, only to vanish into thin air, her car found hours later with no clue to her fate. What happened next would haunt investigators for decades. Alison Keys was, by all accounts, a conscientious, ambitious young woman. She was 24 years old in January 2006. She had grown up in Tampa, gone to college in Central Florida, and had carved out a thriving career in finance. She had purchased her first condo in a well-kept gated complex and was considered responsible, safety-minded, and on a steep upward trajectory. Friends say Alison was always cautious. She carried pepper spray, watched her surroundings, and valued security. Her choice of condo wasn't by accident. Residents note she picked that building partly because it had guards and gates, giving her peace of mind. She was deeply loved by family, had a boyfriend, Rob, and was someone others trusted. In short, she wasn't someone likely to vanish quietly without reason. In late January 2006, Alison and Rob had just returned from a trip to San Juan. The getaway was meant to recharge, and for a moment, all seemed right in her world. They broke up a bit that night, as many couples do, but nothing seemed ominous. The next morning, Alison went to work as usual. That Monday evening, she called her family, a ritual, and later talked to Rob around 10 p.m. That would be the last time anyone heard her voice. When she didn't show up at work the next morning, people noticed immediately how out of character that was. She never missed work without telling someone. Her employer grew concerned. Her colleagues reached out. Her family, alarmed, headed toward her condo. When Alison's family arrived, they asked the condo manager to open her unit with a spare key. What they found was haunting in its benign nature. The apartment looked undisturbed. No signs of forced entry, no ransacked rooms. In the bathroom, there was a wet towel and items that suggested she had showered and gotten ready for the day. Her bed was not made. Clothes, her pajamas, hair tools. Everything looked as if she'd left in the morning, intending to return. But key items were missing. Her purse, her keys, her cell phone, iPod, everything you'd expect someone to bring to work. There was no immediate chaos, no red flags screaming, "Violence here." But that calmness is a clue in itself. It suggested something was deeply wrong, but subtle, deliberate. 2 days later, on January 26th, Alison's car, a 2004 Chevrolet Malibu, was found parked about a mile from her condo complex in another apartment parking lot. The moment this happened, investigators combed surveillance footage from the surrounding buildings, and in the grainy images, they saw something chilling. A person of interest got out of Alison's car, parked it, and walked away. Into a chain-link fence, shadows, and uncertainty. But that person's face, obscured. The camera angles and fence posts conspired to hide identity. The image could only hint at gender and height, somewhere between 5'3" and 5'4", There were nothing definitive. No one recognized the figure, no immediate tie to Alison. It became one of the most haunting visual puzzles of the case. From those early days, authorities began to theorize. Because her valuables were left behind in the apartment, robbery seemed unlikely. The lack of struggle in the apartment, combined with how clean the car looked, almost as if wiped down, suggested a deliberate, calculated act. A scent dog tracked a trail from the abandoned car back toward her condo complex. Investigators speculated the person of interest might have walked or returned into those grounds after depositing the car. But further trace evidence proved weak. Workplace leads were considered. Alison's colleagues and managers were interviewed. A manager had been interested romantically in her, but she refused any workplace relationship. That person was ultimately ruled out as a suspect. As the investigation widened, one theory gained traction: the presence of construction workers at her condo complex. The building was undergoing renovations, and workers, many non-English speaking, shared proximity. Alison had previously told family she found some of them unsettling. She'd been bothered by whistling, catcalling, and odd behavior when she passed them. Investigators attempted to question many of them, though barriers and disappearances hampered progress. Some workers moved away before they could be interviewed. One private investigator working with the family later speculated that Alison might have been abducted immediately upon stepping out of her front door, possibly pulled into an adjacent unit by someone waiting across the hallway. But that scenario remained theoretical. Years passed, leads were chased. Some breaks turned out to be dead ends. The public interest wavered. Many cases like Alison's sink into cold files, but not this one. In 2007, a $1 million reward was offered for information leading to Alison's whereabouts, under the condition she be alive. It went unclaimed. Her family grew frustrated with the pace and opacity of investigation. In 2018, they sued the local police department to obtain case files, and won, gaining access to 16,000 pages of investigative documents. In December 2022, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE Cold Case Unit, took over the case. They vowed to interview persons already identified, retest physical evidence, and bring fresh eyes to old leads. In recent years, the case is no longer considered fully cold by authorities. By May 2025, on what would have been Alison's 44th birthday, the FDLE announced they had reviewed thousands of pages of documentation, interviewed roughly 45 people since their takeover, and identified several persons of interest. They also suggested that artificial intelligence might help identify the figure in the surveillance video. Meanwhile, in a renewed search for physical evidence, a sonar company was brought in to examine Lake Fisher in Orange County after old witness accounts claimed a roll carpet was dumped in the lake near the time Alison disappeared. The search yielded anomalies, but no confirmed discoveries so far. If you're watching and any small memory or clue crosses your mind, no matter how insignificant, pause this video and write it down. Share it in the comments. You might just be the person who finally breaks this case wide open. In cases like this, time is the enemy. Every hour that passes turns fresh footprints into fading ghosts. And in Alison Keys' case, the trail went cold faster than anyone expected. When Alison was first reported missing, local police mobilized quickly, but not quickly enough. In those critical first 48 hours, evidence that could have spoken volumes may have been lost forever. Her apartment complex, the Mosaic at Millennia, was bustling with residents and ongoing construction. Security footage, potential witnesses, even car logs, all crucial, were overwritten or missed due to delays. Family members recall arriving to find investigators treating the disappearance as though Alison had gone off on her own, a misunderstanding that cost precious time. By the time the seriousness of the situation fully registered, Alison's trail had already gone dim. Let's go back to the most haunting image in the case, the unknown figure caught on camera walking away from Alison's car. Police released that footage to the media, a grainy, almost cinematic sequence. The individual's gait was casual, unhurried, almost confident. Every detective watching that footage had the same chilling realization. Whoever this person was, they knew they weren't being followed. The figure's face was never visible. In every frame, a fence post neatly covered the eyes, nose, or mouth, as if fate itself had blurred the truth. Investigators estimated the person's height, analyzed their walk, even compared it to known acquaintances of Alison. No match. For nearly 2 decades, that single image has remained one of the most haunting enigmas in true crime, the frozen moment of a potential killer vanishing into anonymity. When detectives began retracing Alison's steps, one detail stood out. The condo complex had been undergoing heavy renovations. Contractors and construction workers from out of state and even out of the country came and went daily. According to Alison's parents, she had voiced concerns just days before she vanished. Workers would stare or catcall when she walked to her car. She had even told her family she didn't feel comfortable being home alone while they were around. Could one of them have taken advantage of a brief moment, catching her as she locked her door and walked toward her vehicle? Investigators tried to track them down, but by the time they focused on that lead, many of the workers had left the area or returned overseas. Documentation of who was working on site that week was incomplete. Some names were missing altogether. It became one of the most frustrating aspects of the case. The people who might have seen or done something were simply gone. Naturally, police began with those closest to Alison. Her boyfriend Rob was questioned extensively. He lived several hours away and had an airtight alibi. Security logs, phone records, and witness statements all confirmed his location. He was ruled out early, though. In the court of public opinion, suspicion lingered for years. Another lead pointed toward a co-worker who had shown an unusual interest in Alison, reportedly making advances she politely rejected. He too was questioned and cleared. Each interview led to another dead end. Detectives even explored the theory of a stranger abduction, perhaps someone lying in wait, watching her routine for days, striking just as she left for work. But without witnesses, without a scene, it was speculation stacked on speculation. When months turned into years, frustration boiled over. Alison's parents, Thomas and Evelyn Keys, couldn't bear to sit by any longer. They began their own parallel investigation. They hired private detectives, conducted interviews, and revisited every overlooked lead. Their persistence kept the case alive in the public eye. Television specials, podcasts, and tip-line appeals followed, yet the answers remained elusive. But their independent effort wasn't just about hope, it was about control. In 2018, after over a decade of unanswered questions, the Keys family sued the Orlando Police Department for access to the full case file. They won, and what they found inside those thousands of pages only deepened the mystery. When the family finally reviewed the files, several things didn't add up. Surveillance delays. Some tapes from the condo complex were never recovered. Others were overwritten before they were reviewed. Unfollowed leads. Witnesses who claimed to have seen a woman resembling Alison in the days after her disappearance were barely interviewed. DNA testing gaps. Early evidence, including the car and certain objects, had been processed before modern forensic advancements were available. Some samples had degraded beyond usability. The phone mystery. Alison's cell phone was never found, and investigators could not retrieve any meaningful GPS or signal data. For her family, these weren't just oversights, they were heartbreaks. Every missed opportunity meant another brick in the wall between them and the truth. The family's private investigator made a chilling observation after reviewing the condo layout. If someone had been waiting near the stairwell or an adjacent unit, Alison would have had less than 10 seconds between locking her door and reaching her car. That's all it would have taken. In those seconds, someone could have overpowered her silently, possibly dragging her into a nearby vacant unit. And in a complex filled with ongoing construction noise, nobody would have heard a thing. The theory fit horrifyingly well, but without physical evidence, it remained just that, a theory. Years later, technology began to do what human intuition could not. Investigators revisited old video footage using AI enhancement tools in hopes of clarifying the shadowed figure's identity. But even with modern algorithms, the results were inconclusive. The grainy pixels defied clear reconstruction. Still, the FDLE's cold case team hasn't given up. They've also re-examined fingerprints, retested fibers from Alison's vehicle, and digitally enhanced photos of the car's interior. Each step brings them a little closer to understanding what happened in those missing minutes of Alison's life. If you've been captivated so far, take a moment to like this video. It helps keep stories like Alison's alive. Every click spreads awareness, and awareness is power in cold cases. Let's pause to reconstruct the morning Alison disappeared. 7:30. Alison likely left for work. She had showered, dressed, and her phone's alarm history showed she was awake early. 8 o'clock to 8:15 a.m. She fails to arrive at her office. Co-workers attempt to call her, no answer. Noon. Her employer contacts her family, concerned. 3 p.m. Her family arrives at her condo. Later that evening, they begin searching nearby areas. Within 48 hours, her car is discovered parked at another complex, abandoned. No fingerprints, no DNA, no trace of struggle. It's as though the perpetrator had experience or had planned meticulously. To this day, investigators debate whether Alison's disappearance was a crime of opportunity or a targeted abduction. If it was random, a passing predator, a construction worker who seized the moment, it suggests chaos. But if it was targeted, someone who knew her routine, who waited for the exact moment she stepped outside, it implies planning. And that's the paradox haunting the case. Everything about it feels deliberate, yet inexplicably clean. No ransom, no communication, no trace. Before we uncover where the investigation stands today, take a second to subscribe to Criminal Minds Archives. It's your way of standing with families who still wait for answers. Because cases like this deserve your voice, not silence. In the next chapter, we'll explore the latest updates. What new leads investigators have uncovered since 2022. How artificial intelligence and private sonar searches might finally expose the truth. And the emotional toll on the family still waiting for closure after nearly 2 decades. 18 years have passed since Alison Keys vanished. And yet for her family, time hasn't dulled the pain. It's only sharpened the questions. Most disappearances fade from the public eye, but Alison's story is different. It's one of the few missing person cases that continues to generate national attention nearly 2 decades later. That persistence isn't accidental. It's fueled by her parents, Thomas and Evelyn Keys, who have refused to let her memory slip into silence. In their suburban Florida home, a room remains untouched, filled with framed photos, notes from her college days, and the kind of warmth only a daughter can bring. Every January, on the anniversary of her disappearance, they renew their call for information. "We've learned to live with the ache," Evelyn once said, "but not with the unknown." After years of frustration with limited progress, something significant happened in December 2022. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, officially assumed control of the case. This shift represented more than a bureaucratic handoff. It symbolized a second chance at truth. The FDLE's cold case unit immediately began re-examining every lead, every interview, every photograph. They conducted more than 40 new interviews, revisited the person of interest footage, and sought out forensic technologies that didn't exist in 2006. For the first time in years, there was a movement, real, tangible movement. Technology has become the silent detective in Alison's case. High-resolution scanning, AI image reconstruction, and forensic genealogy have all joined the hunt. Enhanced surveillance. Analysts ran the grainy 2006 video through modern AI image enhancement tools, attempting to recover partial facial features. Though the image remains unclear, specialists have noted subtle posture and clothing details now visible for the first time. DNA and fiber retesting. FDL scientists have re-examined trace samples from Alison's vehicle using modern mitochondrial DNA analysis. So far, results have not revealed a definitive match, but they've ruled out several previously unknown profiles. Digital pattern analysis. Investigators are using geographic profiling software to remap travel routes between her condo, the car's drop-off point, and nearby construction zones, identifying potential areas where she might have been taken. Each new tool breathes fresh life into old evidence, but the truth remains elusive. Thomas and Evelyn Keys haven't waited for the system to do the work alone. With the help of private investigators and volunteer search teams, they've partnered with independent experts in sonar imaging and underwater recovery. In April 2024, a professional sonar company conducted an exhaustive sweep of Lake Fisher in Orange County. The location had surfaced in tips suggesting a rolled carpet was dumped there around the time of Alison's disappearance. Sonar scans revealed unidentified anomalies beneath layers of sediment, but nothing conclusive was recovered. Still, the family took it as a sign. There are still places left to search. "Even if we find nothing," Thomas said, "we know we're still doing something. Standing still is the hardest part." What makes the modern phase of this case unique is the new generation of detectives involved. Officers who were still in school when Alison vanished. These are investigators trained in digital forensics, AI analytics, and advanced behavioral profiling. They approach the case not just as a mystery, but as a psychological puzzle. Through consultations with behavioral analysts, they've developed what they call a situational offender profile, likely male, familiar with the condo complex or its layout. Comfortable acting in daylight, indicating experience or confidence in controlling victims quickly. Possible prior interactions with Alison, someone who knew her schedule or observed her patterns. Organized yet opportunistic, able to conceal evidence efficiently. This mix of traits points towards someone who straddles the line between calculation and impulse, a person capable of masking predatory behavior behind everyday normalcy. For the Keys family, every new report is a double-edged sword. Hope comes in waves, but so does exhaustion. Evelyn often describes the experience as living in a permanent state of almost. Almost hearing news, almost getting closure, almost learning what really happened. They've spoken publicly about the psychological toll of ambiguous loss, the unique pain of not knowing if your loved one is alive or gone. It's a grief without rituals, without an endpoint. You don't move on, Evelyn told one reporter. You just keep moving. In recent years, the rise of true crime podcasts, YouTube channels, and online communities has breathed new life into the case. Clips of the security footage circulate on social media every few months, sparking debates and new theories. The family embraces this attention. They believe that constant exposure is their greatest ally. Each repost, each comment, each shared video could reach the one person who knows something. And that's why they've supported projects like this one, to keep Alison's name echoing in the collective consciousness. Even now, criminologists and cold case profilers debate the mind behind the act. Theory 1, the opportunist. Someone saw Alison leave for work, acted impulsively, and seized the moment. This theory explains the lack of pre-planning and the speed of her disappearance, but not the meticulous cleanup. Theory 2, the familiar predator. A construction worker or neighbor who knew her routine, waited for the precise moment, and acted with chilling precision. This aligns with the organized nature of the crime and the comfort level seen in the person of interest footage. Theory 3, the professional. A darker, less likely theory, someone with training or prior experience in abduction or concealment. There's little evidence for this, but the case's cleanliness keeps it from being ruled out. The common denominator among all theories? Control. Whoever took Alison had total control over her, over the situation, and over what little evidence remained. As of 2025, the FDLE's review remains active. Officials confirm they've identified multiple persons of interest, though none have been publicly named. New forensic analyses continue, and investigators have recontacted several original witnesses who lived in Alison's condo complex at the time. Some remember small, almost imperceptible details that never made it into the first reports. Cars parked oddly, sounds in the early morning, unfamiliar faces. It's the accumulation of these fragments that may one day complete the picture. FDL spokespersons insist the case is far from cold. The family believes the same. We've learned that justice doesn't expire, Thomas said. Someone, somewhere, still carries the truth. Beyond the investigation, Alison's story has reshaped how missing person cases are handled in Florida. Her disappearance inspired policy discussions on early evidence preservation and interagency communication. It reinforced the need for immediate public alerts when responsible adults vanish under unusual circumstances. And it proved that family advocacy can move mountains, even against bureaucratic silence. In 2025, the Keys family established a nonprofit foundation in Alison's honor, dedicated to supporting other families navigating cold cases. Their mission: don't let the missing fade into memory. Maybe one day we'll find Alison, maybe one day we won't. But until then, her story isn't just about what was lost, it's about what refuses to be forgotten. The disappearance of Alison Keys remains one of Florida's most haunting mysteries. It's a case where evidence whispers, time erases, but love keeps shouting back into the void. And somewhere out there, the truth still waits to be found. If you believe stories like Alison's deserve to be heard, share this video. It costs nothing, but it means everything. And remember, silence protects no one. Awareness changes everything. When you study a disappearance like this long enough, you realize it's not just the person who goes missing, it's the sense of certainty, the shape of truth itself. Alison Keys was just living her life, brushing her hair, packing her bag, locking the same door she had walked through 100 times before. And in that ordinary motion, she crossed a line. None of us can see the line between everyday safety and the unthinkable. She didn't leave a note. She didn't say goodbye. And that's what makes it so haunting. The silence she left behind. For nearly 2 decades, Thomas and Evelyn Keys have lived with that silence. Not as victims of it, but as fighters against it. They've stood in front of cameras, crowds, and courtroom doors, asking the same question that still has no answer. Where is our daughter? Every lead they chase, every anniversary they mark, isn't just about Alison. It's about every missing soul whose story still lingers in the dark. Behind the headlines, a handful of detectives continue to fight for her quietly, methodically, refusing to let this case be archived as another statistic. They believe answers still exist somewhere in a footprint, a fiber, a face caught between fence posts. And so they work, day after day, year after year, because that's what justice demands, persistence, even when the world stops watching. Whoever took Alison didn't just steal a life, they stole time. Every sunrise since that January morning belongs to them now, unless truth takes it back. Psychologists call it compartmentalization, the ability to hide monstrous acts behind ordinary faces. Somewhere that person walks among us, blending in. They might even tell themselves it's over. But the thing about secrets, they rot, and eventually resurface. For Thomas and Evelyn, the search continues. Not because hope is easy, but because letting go is impossible. Every time they speak her name, they remind the world that justice doesn't have an expiration date. Because in the end, justice isn't only about punishment, it's about remembrance. Alison Keys vanished on a Tuesday morning. Somewhere between her front door and her car, she slipped out of sight. But her story, her voice, it never disappeared. And if you're hearing this right now, you're part of keeping it alive. If this story moved you, share it, talk about it, keep her name alive. Because the difference between a cold case and a solved case is often one person who cared enough to listen. For Criminal Minds Archives, I'm Jeremy. Thank you for remembering Alison Keys.